Welcome back to the Prism Podcast, you guys. Today I want to talk about something that I actually talked to my spiritual teacher with about this last week in our session. And it was so helpful for me. And I just kept pondering it. And I was like, okay, might not be a long episode, but I want to share this with you guys because this has been my guiding light since I talked to him about this. And I've always known this, but it was such a good reminder to myself. And it's this essentially. So the last few months have been crazy productive for me. I hate saying the word busy, but really it's been busy. It's just been busy, but it's been full of productive busyness, right? There's a difference between being busy and productive, but this has been both. It's been like high productivity, but also many hours of productivity, to the point where I'm kind of back to a stage where in a much healthier place now that I was when I first started my business, where, you know, I'm getting up at 4 a.m. I know it's a little scary for some of you to hear. I'm going to bed at like 10, 11, and most of my day is committed to working, business, excelling in different, media and speaking and podcasting and all these things. And then so many other projects that are still just under wraps that I have not talked about. And I was talking to my spiritual teacher and I was like telling him, because within each of here's the umbrella of business, right? And underneath that umbrella, there's 5 or 6 things that are happening right now. And I told him, I was like, under those 5 or 6 things, there's like 8 or 9 projects that get to happen in each one. And some of you understand how I feel. And some of you understand what I'm talking about, because you have, and maybe it's not business, maybe it's like work, you have a million projects happening. Maybe you're doing a side hustle and you have a million projects happening within that. Maybe you have kids and you have a million projects happening with their school and their activities and their stuff. And then you have a relationship, and then you have your house and all the responsibilities, right? I think everyone has many facets of their life that they have projects that get to be completed within. And I was talking to my spiritual teacher. I talk to him every week for 3 hours. He's one of the most amazing people ever. Absolutely changed my life. He told me this fable, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So there was a Buddhist monk, and he was living in India, and he decided to take this journey up this massive mountain. Wanted to summit to the top, right? And his student was like, teacher, you can't get to the top of the mountain. There's no way. Like, how can you even think about getting to the top of the mountain? Like, it's so far. You're going to run out of water. You're going to run out of food. There's so much to do to prepare for this trip. Like, you can't leave all of us at the, ashram or whatever. And the teacher looked at the student and he said, even the beginning of a 1,000-mile journey begins with a single step. And so that, as the teacher went up the mountain, he wasn't focused on all the things that were going to come down the line. Obviously, he practically prepared for them, right? He knew he needed water. He knew he needed food. He knew he needed all these things. But while he was in the midst of summiting the mountain, he wasn't focused on what might happen on the mountain. The only thing that the teacher was focused on was, what is my next step? Where am I stepping next? Am I stepping on that rock, or am I stepping in that dirt, right? The next step. And this, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I needed to hear, because I have the tendency, as so many people do, to lose presence in our journeys to summiting whatever mountain or whatever thing or whatever goal or achievement that you want to summit. I'm a big visionary, and so I see 10 years down the road, and I forget that we can't get to 10 years down the road without doing a single activity right now to move it forward. And I've learned to scale it back, but sometimes it's hard for me, right? I have this project and this project and this vision and my vision board with all the things I want to do. But you can't achieve it without just simply focusing on the next thing, the one thing. If you guys have ever read the book, The One Thing, if you haven't, I highly recommend going to read it. But the concept is, what is the one most essential thing to move my vision forward? What is the next step? Not the next 5 steps. What is the next step? And so what I did with my teacher on that call is we went through every project that I'm doing, every single one, and I wrote them all out. And I have them on my whiteboard over there. And I wrote them all out. And then he said, what is the project that you're working on? What is the first thing you can do? Right? So one of them was a project that I was working on to automate a position, to put systems in place for a position at a company. And he goes, okay, that's great. I said, that's my next step. And he goes, does that feel overwhelming? Or does it feel attainable? And I said, actually, it still feels really overwhelming because that's a big project. That's not just like one day you do it, right? You don't just like systematize something in a day. I mean, you could, but you can't just systematize something and it's done, right? So he said, let's break it down even more. What is the very first step that you can do that you could check off of your list today that would move the project forward? And I said, oh, I can, XYZ, doesn't matter. And then he asked, does that feel overwhelming? And I said, no, I could literally do that in 10 minutes. He goes, great. After that, once you do that, you'll do this again. You'll pick the next thing, the one next thing to move the project forward. And in my mind, that was so freeing to me because it was like, I don't have to feel overwhelmed. I don't have to feel up here freaking out about my vision 10 years away when all I need to do is focus on my next step up the mountain. And this can be applied in every area of your life. Because here's the deal. My best friend always tells me this, and I've started to really embody it. I'm very proud of myself. She always says, we don't have the information. We don't have enough information to get to step 10. All we have is the information to get to step 1. Once we get to step 1, we'll have more information to get to step 2. You can't make a decision on step 10 until you're at step 9. Because there's so much that unfolds in life and in projects and in moving and in business and in friendships and in family and all these things. And so many of us waste so much energy focusing on, oh, I got to get to step 10 and I got to plan everything out. And I'm a control freak, and if it doesn't happen this way, then I don't even want to do it. I'm all or nothing, blah, 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 blah. But if you just look at the big project, figure out what needs to happen, or the big thing in the relationship, what needs to happen next, or the big thing in your health, right? Instead of overwhelming yourself with, I need to lose 90 pounds, or I need to, completely reverse my health that I've totally damaged over 40 years. And you try and say, how am I going to lose 60 pounds? How am I going to lose 80 pounds? It's like, how can I just eat my next meal more intentionally? How can I drink more water? How can I just schedule in my next workout? How can I just get up and work out right now? Right? How can I just cook my meal to be a little healthier than I have in the past? And every day, every moment, it's like Ed Milet. He has a book called The Power of One More, right? It's just, what is the one thing that you can move forward? One more day, one more reach out, one more prospect. If you're in network marketing and you're making a list and you got to make a list of 500 people, instead of saying, I got to make my list of 500 people by the end of the week, it's like, how can I add 100 people to the list for 5 days? Okay, now how can I just add 5 people right now to the list? And then 5 people in an hour, and then 5 people in an hour, and then 5 people in an hour. It feels so much more doable. So my wisdom, my advice being passed on here is, if you feel overwhelmed in your life, if you feel like you have 1,000,010 things going on, is take those things, write them out or type them out, or however you conceptualize and structure your life, take those things and break it down to the smallest thing that you need to do right now. Another example this week that I did this is podcasting. I was like, okay, I need to plan out all my podcasts for all of 2023, right? I'm booked through March. Now I got to book out through November. And that overwhelmed me. I was like, okay, I got to make a new introduction, a new outro, YouTube intro, a YouTube outro. I got to get some music for it. I got to get some video content for it. I got to build a website, blah, 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 blah. Instead, I listed all those things out as to-dos later. And then I said, what is the next step? What can I do tomorrow? And it was like, oh, I can sit down and record a few episodes. And then and if that felt overwhelming, what feels less overwhelming than that? Okay, well, right now, all I need to do is flesh out my next episode of what I'm going to talk about. And then after that, I'll flesh out the next episode of what I'm going to talk about. And even below that, it's like, okay, what's the first topic of the first thing I'm going to talk about? What's the second topic of the second thing I'm going to talk about? Like, get so granular. So I'm really hoping this was valuable. When I talked to my spiritual teacher, I just told him, I was like, oh my gosh, this just saved me so much stress, so much overwhelm. Thank you so much. So I wanted to pass this on to you guys. Again, if you know anybody who would really receive this message and love this message, and you know a lot of people in your life that are overwhelmed and need to hear this, please pass it on. Please share it out. I don't sell anything to you guys in these episodes. I literally just pour my heart and soul into these conversations and these topics, hoping that more people get access to them and they really touch the people who do get access to them. So next week, we're going to be talking about something really exciting because I'm about to film it right now. So I love you guys. I will see you next week. Like, share, subscribe, leave a rating, a review if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thanks again for listening. Okay, bye.